Hannah will be going over, and Hannah is the one on the screen right now. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. And we also have Rachel.
Hi.
All right. So
yeah, thank you. So we'll kind of walk through some resume writing. Feel free if you have questions to throw it out there, or I'm sure in the chat online, Diana can ask them for you. But we'll walk through, we've talked about resumes before. Like Diane said, my name's Hannah Madden. I am the administrative director for JET, and then we have Rachel, who's our adult counselor based out of Virginia. And so what kind of gives me a unique perspective, not only was I career counselor, but now I spend my days looking at people's resumes. And so I get a chance to see a lot different styles and kind of see what works and what doesn't. So let's get into some different types of resumes here. And there's, we can focus on different things within resumes, but these are probably the three most common. So we'll start with chronological resumes. And so these really, they list the work in reverse chronological order. So the top thing on the resume is going to be your most recent job, and then work back from there. And then it focuses on like career progression. So showing a timeline of roles or responsibilities or achievements over time. So like I would use this if you were applying for something in a field that you have been working in for a long time and you want to show your work history and that you have a lot of experience in that relevant field. Or I would also use this probably just as like your go-to if you're not sure or you're making kind of just a generic resume. I think this chronological is the most easy to digest for like hiring people that would be hiring you. People like to see your work history and usually like where you're at currently and then previous before that. So I would say like this would be go-to format for just general resume. Just because, like I said, it's probably the most preferred method to review for people. And it kind of gets to what they're the information they're looking for, typically, most commonly right offhand. So again, ideal for people with work history in the same field, or I would also use this, let's say if like you're applying for an elevated position, not just an entry-level position, but a management position or something like that. This, kind of shows your career growth over time. And so that I think is good for typically like a management or up position.
I don't think we've shared screens, so they can't see this.
I think she just pulled it up and shared it on the computer and walked through it as we did.
Okay.
That's what I
No, but I'm running it. She's over there.
I think didn't she turn it over there too? And just put the camera on it.
Can you guys see the screen?
Well, if you just turn the laptop, can they
right,
see
but
it?
it's a lot of times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and yeah, the writing is way too small. That's
Hey, Diana.
Yeah.
So you pulled the PowerPoint up on the laptop,
right.
and then you hit screen share on Zoom.
Hannah is using she's got the projector plugged into her, so she can.
And that's okay. That's for everyone that's in person. For everyone that's in Zoom, because you're not hooked up to the projector, you can hit screen share and then it'll pop up as an option to choose the PowerPoint. So it'll pop up on our laptop for Zoom people.
This. Is anybody able to see that?
Not yet.
All right. Are we good?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so I'm gonna advance it now. I can't advance. You guys, I'm sorry. I am just inept at this stuff. Here we are.
Doing great, Diana.
Thanks. Here, how's that? I can see it. Can you see it? Christian, shake your head yes if you can see that screen that says chronological. Thank you.
All right, we're good to go.
Back on track. Thank you.
So kind of getting into the key benefits, like I said, it's easy for employers to follow a career path. And this is probably the most common that they'd expect to see. So, they're already looking for the information they need. And then it highlights, stability and growth over a year. So again, if you're within the same field, this is a good one to go to, and it shows you, or shows your career path kind of over an amount of time. Some issues or drawbacks it might have is it will show gaps in employment. And honestly, as someone who does hiring, like that's not necessarily an issue. We know there's a lot of things these days that could cause a gap in employment. And so I would say, at least for us, that's not necessarily a hiring factor. For some people, it may be, and depending on industry, it might be too. And then it's kind of less suitable for people that may be changing careers or have a lot of different experience but are applying for a certain field. So let's get in. Tips for effectiveness. And I would say a lot of these are probably general to any resume. So quantify your achievements when you can. This gives a sales example, like increase sales by 20%. But maybe it's something like added an employee resource program and forms to our company protocols, or something like whatever it might be that you added to. Find a way to quantify and add it in under kind of your experience with that position. Tailor the resume to the most relevant work experience. So again, I think that's relevant for any resume you make. I think I've said it before, but I have a copy of the job description next to me when I'm building any resume, and I use words right from the job description and their qualifications or preferred experience and plug that into experience on my resumes. And then use action verbs to describe responsibilities and accomplishments. So, when we format a resume, we want to be aware of kind of grammar. And one of the things is the tense of the verbs or word you use. So use, I would say, like it says action, could be, why am I drawing a blank? Let's see. Assembled drive gear components using hand and semi-automatic hand tools. So just use verbs that action or like in a not necessarily past tense, but present tense form. So
even for past jobs.
I would say yes, because you're talking about the experience and whatever tense you choose, and not that past tense doesn't work. If you feel that makes more sense to what you're doing, just make sure it's congruent through the whole resume. So kind of looking at an example, and I did print out examples, and then that's what the packet is in front of you. So I would say that this is a really accurate, or like a very, again, easy to digest, well-formatted resume. So these examples I took right off the CareerForce website. It's in, like, if I can show you here, let's go quick. I know you probably won't be able to see it online. I have it pulled up. So this is the CareerForce website. Up at the top, there is job search tools and then resumes. And if you scroll down here are templates and outlines and samples. And so what's nice about this is you can download it and literally plug your information into it, and it's like this exact template right here. It's already has the order of information, you just have to plug in your own information. So that's where I found all of these examples.
I have a question. So is that an easy template to adjust if you needed to change it for another job as well?
Yep, I
Okay.
think so. I
Okay.
played around with them a little bit and I didn't have an issue.
Okay.
Sometimes, like this one seems to be, it's not a table. So sometimes with the word, we'll get into some tips here at the end. But a lot of times I prefer like a Word or Canva template that I plug my stuff into. But what I found with Word is their formats are a lot of times tables. And so then if I like don't like this part and I want to take it out, it might reformat it weird, or you have to find like format the cell.
That's why I asked, because I've struggled with that.
Yeah. Whereas this is it wasn't formatted as a table, it was just like information or text boxes. So you could literally just click and retype.
Okay.
But as you can see, you know, it has the first and last name at the top and contact information. I almost would list your phone number, your name, and then your phone number, because honestly, when I'm calling people for interviews, like that's where I'm looking, and if the phone number's buried, it's frustrating. So if you put the phone number right there, like you're the first person that I'm calling. And then this one has kind of a skills summary at the top. I don't mind this template. If it were me, I would probably flip where the skills summary is and the education. Because again, when I'm hiring someone, for most of our roles, we have to have some sort of education. And I want to see that that education is complete, because if it's not, like that will take them out of the running, especially if it's required for a position. And with that, I would say, if you've completed a certificate or degree, list that, like say, completed Bachelor's of Science or AAS in Liberal Arts or whatever a certificate might be as well, like, you know, CDL, but make sure it's clear that you've obtained it. Because, and again, if you haven't, I mean, I guess you could use that to your advantage where you keep it vague and then it makes them question. But just from a perspective, it's nice when it's clear to see that. But then list work experience, just most recent down. And then again, I would stick with relevant work experience. So it could be something in the same field or something that shows transferable skills. And quite honestly, an easy way to find transferable skills if you're not sure these days, my advice would be to go to like ChatGPT and type in, what are transferable skills from in the hospitality field, from working in a hotel to, you know, like being a server, and it will list, you know, customer service and things that would be relevant in both fields. And then that's what I would put under my work experience bullet points. So any questions with that? Chronological.
So if they want to view this, where would they go to for the online people? CareerForce
mn.com, I believe.
.com or
Yeah.
.org?
I think it's
.com?
.com. Let me double check. I have it up. So yep, .com. CareerForceMN.com, and then it's /resumes.
Okay. Go to resumes.
And like I said, it's nice. You can download and just plug your info into it. So, and it even provides, this is the sample versus the template. I found the sample worked just like the template, and I think they had the same information. So really you could, like, what's nice is if it's in a similar field as the example, you could leave a lot of the information too. All right, so getting into a functional resume. So this one focuses more on skills and qualifications rather than your chronological work history. And then it highlights, you know, specific areas of expertise, and it makes it better for showcasing your skills and your qualifications, maybe rather than your work history. And so I would use this kind of like it says, ideal for career changers. So maybe you know, have worked your whole life in one or two fields, but you're interested in another one. and you're applying for a job, this would be a good way to show, again, those transferable skills without necessarily only showing, you know, your work history in one field. And not that you couldn't talk to your work history either a little bit on the resume, as we'll see, or within your interview, but I would say a lot of people that would be hiring employers are aware, like, skills are teachable. Certain parts of the job are teachable. So if you're in a field and you know, have certain abilities or an understanding, your work history isn't as important. It just shows, you know, that you could potentially be a dependable employee. But we all know, like, different fields that are transferable to, you know, the field that you work within. So again, or this, if you have gaps in employment, or maybe you have a lot of diverse background, so different jobs, then this would be a good one. And then benefits, it emphasizes relevant skills.
I just realized you have the examples right there on, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
But it
It's
is good though for them to know where to find them, because then they can plug it in.
true, so,
and then it allows the candidate to kind of showcase their abilities that match job requirements. So again, have that job description right next to you, and then you can use it to hide the gaps. Possible drawbacks, employers might prefer to see a work history. Like I said, chronological would kind of be my go-to, but I think that'd be less of a drawback. As long as it's well formatted and the information's there, I think something that's well put together is employers would be happy to see out there. And then it can seem like you're trying to hide something, such gaps in employment. So if that is important, they might kind of be on to that. But then I would just have an answer for your interview, or if you have further conversation as to why you might have a gap in employment. Just be ready for that kind of question too. And then tips for effectiveness. So like I said, I have the job description, but tailor your skills to match that job description. Avoid making it too vague. Be specific about your skills and how you've applied them. And again, you can always come to the CareerForce will help you, but if you are working on it on your own and you're not sure, go to ChatGPT and just ask it, and it typically provides some good questions. Or I even do that too. If I for an objective, or let's say, you have added skills in a certain field, but you're not sure how they're transferable, but you want to speak to it in a cover letter or a short paragraph in your resume, I go to ChatGPT for that kind of stuff.
I also have found that ChatGPT helps with getting some of those more professional verbs when describing your job that you've worked for employment history. So.
And you can even put make this sound professional and type whatever you want, and it will make it sound professional. I've used it actually in meeting notes, and I have shorthand that is, for the most part, only known to myself. And I put it into ChatGPT, and it sorted it out professionally. I was like, this is my new best friend. So I would highly suggest it for anyone.
Yeah.
So then moving to the next slide is the example of a functional resume. So again, you see first and last name right at the top, contact information, objective. And then when it gets into the experience, it still kind of lists the job and the skills, but you don't see the employer with the dates listed there. It just kind of works through the positions that the individual has worked. So again, you're still listing those. If you had the job description next to you, you're still listing the preferred qualifications or experience listed in that. It's just rephrased under the position you worked. So again, if you had a lot of different jobs, but maybe for example, myself, I've worked in the restaurant business for a long time, but I've also had a lot of different professional jobs. So throughout my, process of applying for jobs, sometimes I would pull on different roles depending on what I needed for the position I was applying for. And this is how you could list it out. So some of the stuff might have been back way when I was still in college or prior to that, but I didn't want to show oh, this was 15 years ago now for me, I could just list it like this as well. And focusing kind of on those relevant abilities. use. And then below you see it lists the employment history. And again, maybe you didn't know the dates you worked somewhere, but you knew the general amount of time. This would be a good way to list it. And I find like that's when working on resumes, that's something that I'm like, especially if it is a job I had 12 years ago, I'm like, I don't know. I think it was generally like May this year to July the next year or something. You could just use, you know, a year or a year and a half of experience.
What about if it's an online application that has you filling out all this information? And if it won't let you go forward without putting in those dates?
Yeah, I would say online applications tend towards the chronological resume format. And I would just use your best estimate then. Like again, if you know it's May of 2017 to July of 2018, if you don't have the exact dates, usually that's fine. Most of the time, those fields, even if you have to fill out some format, it's not like to the exact date. And if it is to the exact date, then just do like the first of the month to the last of the month you think you ended or something.
And one thing that I have noticed is when like when you see a job listing on Indeed or whatnot, different websites, I always check because usually on the bottom of the listing, there's the website that it links to. And I always click on the website to make sure it's a legit job offer. And then usually, or sometimes, they have a spot where it says like, actually just upload your resume and cover letter to this email instead of having to do the online application. Because I feel like sometimes those can be very hard to navigate. So.
Well, and even if it walks you through the online application and there's still a spot to upload your resume, cover letter, references, do that. Yeah. Because that shows the effort that you put in and those people get moved to the top of the pile. So anytime you can put in the extra effort, that will kind of put you above everyone else. All right, and I think this one is good. Like what I like about these examples too, is if there's a variety of examples in different fields, right? So there's one in more like of a trades related field, there's one more in customer service restaurant field, and then there's one kind of in more of a professional management field. And so you kind of get an example or can see, you know, examples of verbiage depending on the field you're in. And even if it doesn't quite line up, like, again, these are good examples to go through and read. And it might be like, oh, I'm going to steal kind of that phrase, but plug in my own words here and there or something like that. So then we'll kind of move on to the combination resume.
I hope everybody is keeping track of the different styles of resumes, because after Hannah and Rachel are done talking, I'm going to ask you online, you folks in Zoom land, which resume you want to work on, and Pippi is going to then forward those templates to you.
So as you can imagine, as the word alludes to, a combination resume merges kind of the two styles. So you use both kind of a chronological side, but also the functional to showcase skills and abilities, and, you know, those transferable skills we like to see. So it combines the strengths of both types, and emphasizes kind of your qualifications at the top and then gets into the detailed work history. So this, I would say, you know, ideal for people with strong skills, but also relevant work experience. This would be probably something I would use if you are applying in a field you've worked in a long time, or maybe applying for like a step up from a role you've been in for a long time. You can kind of speak to either it's a leadership position, or depending on where you're at, kind of what the next step, what skills you've gained along the way. And then, you know, this is good for professionals who want to showcase their capabilities and more so, you know, their career progression. So again, like maybe you worked in an entry-level position, but you're ready for that next step. This would be a good way to show your chronological work history. Yep, I have the history to back it up, but also this is what I've gained along the way. So key benefits, it offers flexibility to highlight both skills and employment history. It's useful for people who want to show specific expertise. So again, I would say like, this is something, if I was working with someone within a field that they're sticking kind of within their field or a general relevant field, or similar field. And then just, it also provides that timeline along with your competencies. Your drawbacks is it can be pretty lengthy. And you know, if you don't format it correctly, or it can be kind of hard to read and follow too. And in general, for resumes, I would say like 1 to 2 pages is preferable. I remember like going through college there, I was like 1 page only, people don't look at the second page, all that stuff will be missed. But now when I'm hiring someone, especially if they've worked in the field, it's like if they don't have, if it's only on 1 page, it's a little questionable, you know, because you'd want to see that experience. I would expect, especially at someone at the level, most of the time we're hiring a job, they have a 2-year, 4-year degree and relevant experience. And so I would expect to see some work history built up that they could at least talk to their transferable skills, even if it's not the exact role we're hiring for. And then, like I said, it could be confusing. So tips for effectiveness for this type of resume, you know, prioritize the skills most relevant to the job. I feel like we go back to that each time in kind of a little different way. But again, just focus on that job description or what is the most relevant skills. And then keep your work experience section concise, because it's a little bit longer format and you're listing your skills. Make sure that you're not just kind of babbling when you're listing your work experience or trying to put words in to fill it. Make it very specific to the role that you're kind of applying for. To make sure there's good balance between skills and your relevant job history or education, whatever it may be. So then kind of looking at the example of the combination resume. Again, first name, contact information right at the top, list the objective. It's kept pretty short and sweet and to the point. That's kind of how I like an objective, unless you're kind of applying a lot of places at once, then I would make it more general. And that's again, probably where I go to ChatGPT and type in like, I need an objective for a resume for a field or a job in the customer service field. And it will write you a nice little sentence there. And then, so it gets into the professional experience. So as you'll see, it lists it like it did on the functional resume. So the job with the experience versus kind of the chronological, but then it gets into the specifics of the chronological below. So you could kind of play with that too. And even if you wanted to add the chronological next to the job at the top, if you wanted to save more space and add in more jobs, then I would kind of combine the two. And then education and awards and certificates at the bottom. So again, just a good mix of the two. Sometimes I think it's nice to see, like if someone has a variety of experience, but many jobs that would apply to the role that they're applying for, it's really nice to see kind of this layout of like the job and then the experience underneath. Or even if, like, let's say you move and you're applying elsewhere out of state, and they're probably not going to know your employers or be familiar with them. I think doing a layout like this is nice too, just because sometimes, like, you know, we've had people apply from out of state and it gets confusing because you don't know what this business is. And so like the name could not really allude to the job, and then you're trying to kind of figure out under the skills. So it's nice to just list the job and the skills and then kind of employers. So just some other just general tips I found helpful and good takeaways. I talked to it a little bit in the beginning, but use a pre-made template from Word or Canva or even the CareerForce, one of these templates. Like, make your life easy. And they have some really nice looking ones that you don't have to do the work on. And again, they'll even provide some verbiage too sometimes. So that's my go-to usually, is to just find a template, work on a template. And then if the template has color in it, color code the template to the company's colors. So if there's navy in it, use navy. If there's green, try to find green in there, or use green in some way. It's just kind of a little Jedi mind trick that aligns you with the company from the get-go. Excuse me. I always keep a version saved and update it each time I apply to a new job. And quite honestly, I have like a general working template, but then every time I make a new version, I save that version. Because sometimes, like maybe you get a job in a field for an amount of time, and then you're applying for a job in the field you've worked in previously, but you're not currently in. Then I still have that old version with the employers and the dates and the relevant experience listed that I can use to kind of make my update it with my most recent experience too. So I always keep multiple versions saved. Excuse me. Make sure your font is readable. So that's another thing is, while we're trying to fit things into one page and make it formatted nice and easily readable, sometimes the font gets really small. So just make sure, 12 is a good general size. Oh, sorry. I wouldn't go smaller than like 9 or 10. I think beyond that, it gets hard to read. And they're gonna miss skills and experience and maybe align someone else better than you, even if you're more qualified for a job. Make sure to correct all grammatical, spelling errors, all those things. And I always have someone else look at it, regardless of who that is. Usually it's just a friend of mine, or quite honestly, I think I've said my mom. My mom always looks at my resumes and my cover letters still. You can bring it into the CareerForce or email it to one of our counselors and we'll review it and give you feedback as well. And then I don't mention, and I would advise to avoid mention of salary or benefits unless it's specifically asked. So for in like one of those online applications, sometimes that'll be one of the questions. Like if you're filling out work history, it might ask you what you got paid in a certain role. That's fine there, but if they're I wouldn't put like preferred amount on your resume or something like that. I wait until that job, you've gone through the interview process and they offer you the job, because now you have the leverage too. So they want you in the role and kind of talk your way into the salary or range you're looking for, hopefully. A lot of times it's a set amount, right? And now, I believe, I could be wrong, but I think they have to put salary amount in job postings. So recently was updated in one of the laws. I believe it's salary and is it hours? Maybe hours, but they have to list the amount that they're hiring for in a position. So like I said, most time it'll be a set amount, or they have to give at least, like if it's a range, the range. So I did bring templates that Diana has. They come from our creative job search booklet. And actually, Rachel and I were talking at the beginning, and I'm thinking we will bring some of those here. We'll either do a class kind of working out of it, or we'll just bring some. We have a booklet and then a workbook that goes with it. And we can bring some here. This has they're a little outdated, but it has good information. But in it, there are examples. And so I put those on your tables over there of a chronological, a functional, and a combination resume. And they're just blank, so you could fill it out. So this, I think we'll just take maybe 5 minutes here. And if you just want to work through it, and then we can kind of go over questions if there's any questions. But kind of pick which one you think would work best for you. Maybe sometimes it's like you just prefer this method. That's okay too. If you have a preference, like you can do that. If you prefer functional over chronological, like you can choose to just do it how you like it too. But if you're applying for a certain job and you think one would be helpful over the other, or you want some advice, let me know too. But maybe just pick one of those, and then we'll do 5-10 minutes to work on it, and then we can kind of do some questions.
Great. I'm going to have the online Zoom people let me know which style you would like emailed to you by Pippi. I'm going to review them with you quickly. Okay, combination. Next one is functional, and this is generally the one pager. And it's not necessarily looking at specific dates of employment. Somebody's coloring on there. And then we have the chronological. If you've got years that you worked somewhere, that would be the opportunity to put that down to show that there has been no break in your employment. Or if there's a break in your employment, that's okay too. You can always explain if they ask. If yours is more than 2 pages, yes, combo would be a good option for you, Chris. And then we're gonna give everybody till next Wednesday to complete this, and you will get credit for being in this class right now. So you get a class credit now, and then once you turn in your completed resume by next Wednesday, Wednesday is the deadline. If you turn it in sooner, great, but you will get a credit for that as well. Okay, any questions? All right, everybody online, please mention, like Chris just did, he's asking for a combo. Sounds like I'm working at a fast food
So
restaurant.
what if we already have a resume? Can we use the one we already have?
You can update that if it needs to be updated, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, Diana, you did receive them yesterday, way to go. If you want more than one, let us know.
You have a resume thing?
Absolutely, yep. Yeah, you're gonna get credit for that, you spent a lot of time in there. Yep. Okay, Ryan, gotcha, functional.
Yeah, which one do you lean more? Which one?
Chronological one, for the say it's the most standard one. I have a 9-month gap, but I also have 10 years experience in fund comps.
Alex, which one would you like?
Yeah, I tend to lean that way too. So maybe the functional one. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, they're good for different reasons.
so if there's
It's nice to have
gaps,
some options.
the functional resume would be the way to go. Okay,
Well, we can go ahead and fire if you want. If you have questions, feel free to ask.
also keep in mind, we've got 2 computers here for people to work on. And you can email the completed resume to you after
Did you
you're
graduate high
finished.
school?
There's
So
also,
I would list that.
there's also a computer over at the Empower program office for people to use. Okay, so please let us know which one you want sent. Christian, Alessandra,
Yeah, that's what they were saying.
okay, Christian, I understand.
Yeah, I think that's tough. I think depends on the field you go into, right? And like you said, you have relevant experience, 10 years relevant experience. So if you're going into that field, that's helpful. Or it shows like a good employment history too, right? I also think it's how you build the resume, and that's where you would want to probably speak to your high school diploma, and that's how I'd list it probably on your, because even though I guess you got a GED, but I'd still either list it either way, like still list your education. I'm gonna pull up an example here of one. I gotta find it.
Well, I was in high school, I was 12th grade, and then I dropped out 19 phrase it, through high school, 4 years of high school /T. Recipient. I phrase it like it is on application where it's one thing, diploma/T. So they'll distinguish that.
That's why I would list it as diploma, because typically they refer to it as diploma either way. But and that's where I'd put it at the bottom. So this is someone right here who never graduated high school. So this is how we built their resume. I changed the names and locations of things. But essentially had some relevant experience, had less relevant experience, but transferable skills, right? And so that's where I'd list the experience first. We still did it chronological because we wanted to show like a good work history for the most part. And especially because there were two very relevant positions, so like this one right here and there that were long-term and relevant, but then we still want to show like there wasn't gaps in work history in between those times. But we just listed the times they went to school and the school they attended, even though they didn't graduate.
Yeah.
And so you could do that too, or if there's anyone that has like some college experience, or like if you had a certificate, I would list it there too. And so even if it's like, I mean, if it were like CPR or something, I'd maybe put that one at the end or under skills. But sometimes there might be a certificate you gained through work that you're not thinking of, but that would be relevant for the job. You could add it in there as well. And then kind of touched on some skills. And then this right here, when I talked about like needing a paragraph to put into ChatGPT, this was one of those paragraphs. And so this individual did plasma cutting out of their house and did that for many years, contracted for services for companies like Flow. And so while that wasn't what was needed for this job, like Flow was a contractor that the company they're applying for worked with. So relevant for this job. So we just typed up a short paragraph to kind of speak to that a little bit too. And so this person had always kind of been like entry-level position, mechanic, boots on the ground, but wanted to move into a higher level kind of desk job. So this is how we put it together, and they ended up getting that job. So that's where I think, like, even a combination would probably be good for you too, where you could list the chronological to kind of show the history. And so, like, you could even, I think if you have something, just build off what you have. You don't need to like change everything. But a chronological where it lists the job and you put the time next to it or something. So a combination of the two would show like good work history and relevant skills too.
Hannah, how many people are actually asking for a printed resume nowadays?
If it's a good employer, they should. That would be my, like,
Okay.
Even if they ask for a resume and you're applying on Indeed and you have a resume built through Indeed, I would have a separate resume.
Okay.
Because one, the Indeed ones do not look good. They're not flattering to the individual. They're not formatted well. They're going to the bottom of the barrel. Plus, there are people going above and beyond. So while a lot of employers have probably switched to an online application, and I think that's helpful. And if they don't like prompt for a resume or cover letter, I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't like stress and think, oh, I have to do this. But if there's an option to add those things in, I would do it.
So if somebody needs to print one, are they able to print one in color over at your office, over at CareerForce?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so that's an option, as well as coming to the Empower office. You would have to probably email it to myself or to Pippi, because I know that we are limited with how much color we print in. So that's something to consider.
And I think, excuse me, even if you don't have like a paper hard copy one, to have an electronic format of your own resume separate from like one you've built within an employment website is good to have, even to just keep updating and for your own reference. But yeah, like I'll be honest with you, that application process is kind of your first test as an employee. to see like, are you willing to go through the steps that it takes? Because it's like, can you take direction, right? And like, that's kind of what they're figuring out within this application process, is like kind of weeding out some of those basic skills too. So even though it might feel like extra hoops to jump through, I would just say do it.
That's why it's have last name, first name, and then initial. Same name. Want to go their first name first.
That very much could be. I haven't used that or had like anyone tell me that they use that specifically.
I get it.
Yeah. Well, or like, I mean, I think again, I've spoke to this previously, but when in our job descriptions, when we put something and we post it online, the end paragraph is where we put how to apply information. And we ask that people actually email me their cover letter, resume, and references directly, and don't apply on Indeed. And that's kind of like our first test of like, do they have attention to detail? Can they follow direction? And I will say it's no more than a handful of people that actually read to the bottom of the description and do it that way. But then we have kind of in our scoring system, when we review the people that actually went through the process, they get kind of bumped to the top. So those are the people that will already receive a higher score because they did as directed. So it's just kind of those little details to be aware of.
Are there any questions from Zoom land? Please put them down. Otherwise, we will be, oh, there's one. Oh, there's two. All right. Nope, no, okay. So anybody online, either get in touch with Pippi or myself, let us know which particular resume format you would like provided to you. Or if you want more than one or all three, let us know. And as long as you get that to us by next week, that will be great. Okay, Jean, yes, please bring the one in from Indeed.
Yeah, and if you ever want, like if you're working on it and you'd like to have feedback, you can always bring it to this class, like the next class too, and we can review them if you'd like as well.
Yeah. All right. Any last parting comments here?
I don't think so, not that I can think of.
Okay, well, everybody get going on that resume update, and we will see you hopefully by next Wednesday. Thank you. Bye.